Yes, hello everyone. Welcome back to another weekend review show here on Cluiche with me, Séamus Brady, your host, and I'm joined by Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman, to break down another weekend of action across Gaelic games. And the headline: Kerry are the All-Ireland football champions of 2025. The Kingdom are back on top, winning their 39th All-Ireland title. And the other games we're going to talk about are also the All-Ireland Senior Camogie Championship semi-finals, where it was confirmed yesterday that Cork and Galway would be meeting in the All-Ireland final for the second year in a row. Delighted to be joined by Matthew Hurley, as I was saying. And down there, if you are new on the show, the ticker down the bottom will tell you how we do things here on the show. If you have any highlights, any comments on the weekend, anything like that, throw them in and let's get involved in the discussion. Peter here says, "Evening, lads. Congratulations to the Kingdom. Title 39 in the bag." And Brian O'Riordan says, "A famous day for Kerry all told, and a 5th All-Ireland senior medal for Jack O'Connor." Well, we're going to get into that. And then we also have Dennis Tynan saying it was a bore fest. Interesting enough. Faithful podcast team, of course. He says, "David Clifford is a freak in nature, but my God, the performances of Gavin White and Paddy Clifford were just a joy to watch." As I said, joined by Matthew Hurley. Matthew, you were saying it there in the group chat. It's a rough week for Cork, but congratulations to the Kingdom on a very, very deserved All-Ireland Championship, and good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Séamus. It's the last time, I would say I haven't been on since last weekend, obviously, where I was absolutely, I think yourself and Aaron haven't seen me as down, to be honest, over the past week. Since the hurling last week, that was pretty hard to take. And today was, in a way, in some ways harder. Obviously, Kerry winning it. Congratulations to them. It's a brilliant victory from them. Obviously, you don't want to see your rival county win it. Obviously, I am, I was devastated that the Cork hurlers lost last week. I am more of a Cork football supporter, though, so it is gut-wrenching, I would say, to see Kerry win the All-Ireland. Again, 39 time there.
Yeah.
But look, congratulations to them. Absolutely brilliant performance. They dominated for pillar to post. Donegal just weren't in it. And I suppose, to be honest, I think we all know who's going to be footballer of the year. Even before the final, I knew who was going to be footballer of the year, no matter what the result was. But I think he cemented it today with 9 points was David Clifford. I think Damon Fitzmaurice mentioned all from play as well. The guy's a freak of nature. I think you have to categorize him as one of the best Kerry footballer in history. You talk about Mikey Sheehy, you talk about Pat Spillane, all these players, and Declan O'Sullivan and the Gooch, obviously. But Clifford is just another level. This season, under the new rules, even look at my top scorers list this year, you normally have fun with it, thinking who's going to be the top scorer this year, who's going to be from play, who's going to be overall. Clifford has topped it, I think, since the last round of the qualifiers. He's been absolutely outstanding this season. And Paddy today, 12 points and assists, I think it was. I'd have to double check my notes there. Sean O'Shea, 3 points and assists, plus obviously 2 2-pointers in the game, 6 points overall. It was just an outstanding performance today from Kerry, from pillar to post. Obviously, brilliant display from them. If you were to take away the emotional aspect from a Cork point of view, obviously, you feel positive in a way because we did take Kerry to extra time and we did beat Donegal last year. So it does indicate that the football championship is close. Ourselves aren't too far away. Meath aren't too far away, and things like that as well. With other teams, slipping down the wayside, the likes of yourselves in Dublin, the likes of Mayo and all them are slipping down the wayside, where other counties are starting to rise up. Down is another prime example of counties starting to rise up. So hopefully that is the start of counties starting to rise. But from a Kerry point of view, brilliant win from them. They were utterly deserving champions as well. And yeah, they beat Donegal, really beat them up really in the first half. And if Jack O'Connor is to leave his post as Kerry football manager, it'll be some achievement to leave it on with an All-Ireland win.
Yeah, no, you can't argue with that. I mean, you just look at their performance; they were just undeniable today. They were just undeniable. John Doherty says Kerry have sure shattered the myth of Ulster invincibility after today. Hopefully next year the Dubs can regroup and rebuild and take the Kingdom down. I mean, that was what the goal was. That was what the mission was in 2023. It was get the band back together and, reclaim Sam Maguire. But I think it's even more difficult now than it was in 2023. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Jack O'Connor does go. they're going to have to get that next appointment right. And it would be interesting to see who they would pick to come in. Obviously, you have people like Cian O'Neill there and Aidan McGarrett who knows the system inside out. Maybe they could be options. Maybe you're looking at Tomas O'Shea. Obviously he has a good relationship with the players and everything like that. You saw that when they came over for interviews at the end of the game. So there's a lot of options there for Kerry, but they will have to get that right. And Brian says Jack O'Connor will be leaving his post. Peter says Kerry pumped and primed like a caged beast, unleashed and simply destroyed Donegal. Beware the chasing pack. Also, Peter asks, biggest winning margin in a football final for a fair while. I mean, I can't think of an All-Ireland final that felt that one-sided. Tyrone, Brian here says, Tyrone, Dublin 2018, where Dublin did the 4 in a row, is the one that kind of comes to mind, where it was pretty obvious who was going to win from early doors. I think you have to go back a long time before you have a dominant final like this one. But let's jump in. So let's jump in and keep the comments coming, guys. It's been a really, really strong start in terms of the engagement, which we absolutely love to see. But let's jump right in and get to it. So the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship Final of 2025. Kerry 126, Donegal 19 points. Kerry powered home for their 39th All-Ireland football title with a superb display. Joe O'Connor's goal in the final seconds was the icing on the cake in a wonderful day for Kerry GAA. Matthew, Kerry are the All-Ireland football champions for 2025, and you can't say anything other than they thoroughly deserved it.
Absolutely so. And even as I was mentioned there, look at the stats for today, like Paddy Clifford getting 9 points and assists. He didn't play much of a part at the start of the championship due to injuries and obviously the red card that he got against Cork, but a lot of people putting him into all-star teams now, and I can't really complain with it considering his last few performances in terms of his assists, like 9 points assisted today, including 2 2-pointers. David Clifford, actually, in the first half, Kerry had 4 2-pointers. He scored 3 of them and assisted the other for Sean O'Shea. Or won the free off, which Sean O'Shea got the 2-pointer off. Sean O'Shea assisted 3 points himself in the second half as well. And what I was impressed with from the Kerry point of view as well, they didn't rely on one aspect of the game to get their scores. Like from their own kickouts, they got 12 points. From Donegal's kickouts, they got 6. From turnovers, they got 1-6. And obviously, they got a point from the throw-in in the first half and the second half. So they got it from all over the aspects there. They absolutely deserve to win it. We talked about David Clifford, Paddy, and Sean O'Shea. To be honest, my man of the match was Gavin White. None of the 3 there, but Gavin White was absolutely unreal from wing back. Leading from the front, obviously getting 2 early on, and then wisely fisting it over the bar for his 3rd point of the day as well. Joe O'Connor, his goal capped off in that unbelievable season. And what I was saying to myself as well, that earlier after the game, obviously, if David Clifford didn't have the year that he had, or if David Clifford wasn't just a supernature player, Joe O'Connor probably would have been in the conversation for Footballer of the Year. He probably would have been Footballer of the Year. He was absolutely incredible. But because of his unreal teammate, he's not going to get it. And it just epitomised the main Kerry players stood up today. And unfortunately, from a Donegal point of view, other than Conor O'Donnell and Oisin Gallen, and while I'm on it, Paddy McBrearty should coming onto the pitch, fair enough, experienced campaigner. Why was Jimmy bringing off Oisin Gallen? 100% game, 3 points scored. What was going on there?
But on top of that, then you had very little right-footed kickers. So you had Conor O'Donnell, you had McBrearty, and I was like, well, who's coming in off the right? I was like, I don't know. I just thought it was a pretty bad decision. And like the thing is, like when you look for Donegal made a lot of mistakes, like in hindsight, and that isn't in hindsight. I was looking at it thinking Kieran Moore was picking up Joe O'Connor at the start, and I was like, that's not really a like for like matchup. And Joe O'Connor dominated under the kickouts in the first quarter. And then Gavin White absolutely tore Donegal to shreds in the first half with his powerful running from the half-back line. And I was thinking, okay, they clearly haven't got to grips with him. Paddy Clifford was given the space at Croke Park, especially in the second half. And then they said it on commentary, like, oh, there's been a directive that, Donegal are getting stuck into Kerry here and they're getting stuck into Paddy Clifford. And I was kind of like, why did it take him dominating for 20 minutes to get stuck into him? You know how good he is. You had all the warning signs in the world. You had the evidence of how it had worked really well to follow him all over the place. And you had the evidence that if you don't do that, he will tear you apart. Why did it take so long to go for Paddy Clifford? Why did it take so long to put someone who could contest with Joe O'Connor in the air on Joe O'Connor? Why did they not go for 2-pointers?
Yeah.
Like, they started the year off as probably the best team in Ireland with the 2-pointers. Darragh O'Bweel, Kieran Thompson, Michael Murphy, all Oisin Gallen, all showcased that they were well capable of kicking them. And as the year went on and as the games got higher and higher in terms of the stakes, it's like they dropped off it. They were like, no, we actually don't really like kicking the 2-pointers. And today, I mean, they barely attempted one. They barely attempted a 2-pointer. And Kerry then, on the other hand, started off the year not really going for them. I mean, they didn't even pay them any attention in the league final. And then today, they butchered Donegal with the 2-pointers. David Clifford got those in the first half, including the one just before half-time. Whereas Donegal were just not interested in the 2-pointers. Donegal didn't even hint at a goal at any stage of that game. They never took a shot at Shane Ryan. And yeah, they just didn't threaten Kerry at all. And in terms of the shooting, look, they still scored 19 points in an All-Ireland final, but they looked very hesitant to take shots on. They looked like they would only take it on when they were in absolutely the right position to do it. Whereas Kerry had a bit of, bravery about them. Like David Clifford taking on the 2-pointer shots that he took on, Shawnee taking on the shots that he took on. Not easy shots, yet they took them on and usually scored them. And even if they didn't, like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You got the shot away, just work another attack. Whereas Donegal actually wasted so much opportunities by just not pulling the trigger.
Yeah, exactly. And that is epitomised by the stats in its own right. Like, they had a 67% shooting accuracy, around 81% in the first half. But that epitomises your point exactly. They were only taking on the shots when they had maybe an 80 or 90% chance in their minds of converting them. And that was Donegal's kind of tactic throughout the whole season. But there was a point in the second half when Darragh O'Bweel was on the ball, when McBrearty even was on the ball, you have to go for 2-pointers then. Like, look at the margin of the scoreline. Look at the scoreboard up above you. You have to go for them. Simple as that. And I feel like Kerry, you have to take your hats off them. They were brave in going for the 2-pointers. Like, the one they worked for, the David Clifford one at the end of the first half in particular. Like, Kerry knew they were smart. They knew the new rules, even though Donegal kind of had that hesitancy about them. But when you look at Kerry, they looked at the clock thinking, okay, we'll slow this down. We'll get into the best man in the right place at the right time, and we'll shoot on the hooter. And that's what David Clifford did. Crucial score. Instead of going 5 points up, they went 7 points up at halftime. Yeah. And that was a crucial part of the game as well from a Kerry point of view. And you look at even some of Donegal's, the bigger games, the knockout games in the championship. Against Lowe, they got 2 2-pointers. Against Monaghan, they got 3. Against Meath, 1. Kerry, 0. Yeah. They actually got progressively kind of worse at the 2-pointers as the knockout stage went on. And that's a worrying part from a Donegal point of view as well. And
the thing is as well, Matt, is like in the final today, they didn't even look like they wanted to take them on. Like, I actively saw like players like O'Bweel, McBrearty stepping inside the arc and then pulling the trigger. I was like, could you not take the shot a step outside? And all of a sudden, O'Bweel was so confident kicking them earlier in the year. McBrearty was so confident kicking them earlier in the year. Gallen was so confident kicking them earlier in the year. All of them didn't even have an interest in looking at the post to kick a 2-pointer. And Kerry tore them apart with the 2-pointers down the other end. That has to be a factor in how Kerry got over the line. But the next question I have for you is, you look at the key stages of the game. Obviously, you're looking at the first 15, 20 minutes. Kerry had that incredible start. In the first 10 minutes, there were no wides, but Kerry were far more impressive up front. And they were 13 points to 4 up before 20 minutes had even been played. As you were saying, Gavin White, Joe O'Connor, and the Cliffords were particularly impressive in that period. And then that 2-pointer from David Clifford just before half-time to send them in 7 points clear, that was massive. And then you're thinking about the whole year, the third quarter, for both teams had been their most important period of the game where they tended to blow teams away. The fact that Kerry held Donegal and actually stretched the lead out during that period was huge. So then even when Donegal pushed it down to 4, they still had a long way to go. And ultimately, they were never able to close it out. And then Kerry kicked on down the other end. Further scores from Paddy, from Shawnee, and then that brilliant goal by Joe O'Connor, just right at the end. the icing on a wonderful cake for Kerry.
Yeah, exactly. And a quote, actually, Tommy Rooney was interviewing Jack O'Connor and off the ball after the game. And I don't want to really mention this, obviously, because it brings PTSD back. But Jack did mention the hurling last week. He mentioned that Cork collapsed in the second half, only scored 2 points or whatever. And he said to the Kerry players at halftime, look at the hurling last week. We have to go ahead and not just keep it steady in the second half, win the second half. And to be fair, Kerry won the second half by 3 points. Yes, by the Joe O'Connor goal, but like, they kicked on. They still did the simple things right. And even when Donegal dragged it back to 4 points, Kerry were still going to kick on and get the win in the end. Yes, Donegal kicked some avoidable misses towards the end, probably unlike them. But you have to give a lot of credit to Kerry in terms of driving it on, and in terms of putting Donegal under pressure in terms of turnovers. And then, obviously, to get the goal towards the end, to put the dagger into Donegal hearts towards the end of it. But I think, like, Jack, like, if that is his lasting impact on the Kerry team, I don't know, did he confirm? Obviously, he's stepping away from the Kerry job, but look, we'll say that he probably will. If that is his lasting impact, it's some lasting impact to have, to win the All-Ireland title, to tell his team to kick on in the second half rather than just holding back. Like, that is the sign of an excellent manager and an excellent team as well. And as I said before, their key men stood up: the Joe O'Connors, the Paddies, the Davids, the Sean O'Shea's, even the Shane Ryans in goal, Jason Foley at full back, or Gavin White was superb as well. Even the likes of Sean O'Brien and Mark O'Shea, who don't get a lot of praise out of the midfield line, were absolutely superb, I thought. So for their first All-Ireland final, I did discuss on my pod with Aaron during the week that those two guys, there probably would have been a concern comparing that midfield to Donegal's midfield, which I thought would be Hugh McFadden against Michael Langan, experienced campaigners. This is more or less Sean O'Brien and Mark O'Shea's first year at inter-county level. It might be Sean O'Brien's second, but at a high level, that was their first, the both of them. So they performed absolutely brilliantly in terms of that. In terms of Donegal, I have to mention this as well, Séamus, another why. Hugh McFadden getting dropped. I know Caelan McGonigal's a good player, but Hugh McFadden getting dropped before throwing. What was the reasoning? I think it was kind of a case where Jimmy was trying to be too much of a genius and paying Caelan McGonigal more of a defensive-minded player, and it backfired massively.
Yeah, well, in that first 15 minutes, I was like, lads, this game is getting away from you fast. Like, this is like Kerry are going to town here. And we've seen that, in the second half against Armagh, like, how quickly Kerry can stretch the lead out. We've seen that against Tyrone, how Kerry had no answer really when Kerry really, really put their foot down in that second half. Tyrone had no answer. I don't know if I said that wrong. Very, very interesting to look at. And then we have to talk as well. Peter here says Jack kind of hinted out the gap. I mean, we'll say that there again, because I seen he clicked on another. Peter said Jack kind of hinted that he's out the gap. I mean, if you look at the record of Jack O'Connor now, 5 All-Ireland titles as a senior manager, but on top of that, he's managed at all levels for Kerry. He's had success at all levels for Kerry, and more medals, more All-Ireland medals at schools level, everything like that. The guy is a legend of Kerry GAA. There's no question about it. He has to be considered as one of the best managers that we've seen. When you look at his record, when you look at his achievements on paper, it matches up with basically anyone that we've had in the game. He's an unbelievable leader and an unbelievable figure in the history of Kerry GAA. How do you look at this? Because, I mean, it's a sweet All-Ireland for him to win, because you think about it, beating Armagh, Tyrone and now Donegal back to back, when you consider they've had bad days against those 3 counties with Jack O'Connor, either as manager or as coach or everything like that, whether it's Armagh 02, Tyrone in various years, 03, 05, 08, Donegal 2012, which was actually his last game in his last term. To beat them 3 back to back, to win an All-Ireland, by God, this one's going to be sweet.
It is. And a lot of people have been going on about Kerry having easy runs to the final, but this year you can't really complain about it. The performance they put in the third quarter, especially against Armagh, was absolutely unreal in a way. And their semi-final performance against Tyrone was, how would I describe it? Like, I think Paul Flynn described Tyrone's performance against Cavan this way: boringly good. It was a boring game in the semi-final, but they still got over the line in the end. without much fuss. And then against Donegal today, they dominated for pillar to post and they got over the line. And let's not forget, Séamus, there was a lot of people calling for Jack O'Connor's head, including his past players. Dara O'Shea, that article he wrote for a piece online, like he was saying that Kerry should call off the year now. It was a shame that they didn't draw Galway in the fourth round or the preliminary quarterfinals because their season could have just ended. I think Dara, he was there today, obviously with the Jubilee team, but I think he is egg in his face today after those sort of comments. Like seriously, Séamus, to write that kind of article when Kerry are still in the All-Ireland, having won the Munster Championship, having won the league, it was a bit ridiculous, wasn't it? To write them.
I've never really understood it, to be honest. I've never understood it, and I never will. I'll never understand people that throw shit at their own county, team, management, everything like that. I've never understood it. Also, as well, and I'm not saying that in any sort of way. My pet hate, just across the board, my pet hate is fans that leave early, fans that walk out when there's like 5 minutes left. I'm like, cool. If you're going to do that, let someone else have your ticket. Don't go. Honestly, if you're just there to watch your team win and you're not going to stand by them when it's not their day, don't go. Like, honestly. Because
the Cork support last week, Séamus.
What? But like diehard, Brian there in the comments, like diehard Dublin fans like Brian, I guarantee Brian would stay until the very last whistle, even in like the Cork game where we got 7 goals scored against us. But then there's, that annoys me. Especially when you see it in droves. It must have a real impact on the team, when they see fans, packing up and leaving after scores and everything like that. I'm not a fan. But Shawnee here says Dara wrote that article to motivate Kerry. Brendan Keneally says, lads, if Joe O'Connor wasn't nailed on for Player of the Year today, he cemented Player of the Year today, stood up all championship long when Kerry needed leaders. Brendan, that is a great point, but there is also David Clifford to be considered there. And anybody watching, we've got a healthy number 31 watching right now. I'd like you to show in. Who's your Player of the Year? Is it David Clifford? Is it Joe O'Connor? Is it Paddy Clifford? There's maybe a dark horse. There's definitely, but it has to be someone from Kerry, if we're being honest. It has to be, in my opinion, it has to be David or Joe O'Connor. I think then nailed on All-Stars, you're talking Gavin White, you're talking Michael Murphy, like nailed on All-Stars. But we'll get into that discussion later on down the year. Jumping back into the game then, talking about that third quarter, because obviously, that's been the most important period in the game for both counties the entire year. Like, Donegal blew me the way in that third quarter. They did a lot of damage against Armagh in the Ulster final in the third quarter. Donegal had always done damage in the third quarter. And Kerry, very, very similar. You look at how back-to-back they had dismantled both Armagh and Tyrone in that third quarter. So going in at halftime when Kerry were 7 points up, I was looking at that third quarter going, do you know what? Let's be honest here. Like, this is the most important third quarter now of the year. This third quarter will decide who wins the All-Ireland. And Donegal need to get the run on Kerry in this third quarter and do something similar to Kerry, what Kerry did to them in the first quarter of the game. They need to rack up 7 or 8 points in a row, really take it to them. Because there's no way that they're going to stop Kerry scoring down the other end. What did Kerry do well, in your opinion, to negate what Donegal could bring in that third quarter and basically manage out the storm? Because even though Donegal did, at times hit 3 points in a row, 4 points in a row, and bring the gap back down to 4 points, I never bought that Donegal were going to catch them. I never bought it. I was like, because the key thing with Donegal as well was there was no inspirational score. There was no goal. There was no 2-pointer from an outrageous angle like the one that David Clifford got. There was nothing that made you go, right, that's a massive shot of motivation. That's a massive shot of momentum now in Donegal's favour. They kind of just scored a couple of nice points, but then Kerry would go down the other end and get a 2-pointer. How did Kerry make sure Donegal basically never got momentum?
It's actually weird saying that what Kerry did in the third quarter was actually key, because actually Kerry did lose the third quarter 6 points to 4, but it's the less damage that they did in the third quarter from a Donegal point of view. Like, it was just, like from a Kerry point of view, they didn't allow Donegal any goal chances. 2 pointers, obviously that was Donegal's old card. They didn't choose to shoot. But what was most interesting as well, Donegal didn't create 1 goal chance in the game. Kerry created 2. Obviously, the David Clifford one where the kick out was kicked short in the second half, and obviously the Joe O'Connor goal. But Donegal didn't create a goal chance, and that deserves a lot of praise for the Kerry full back line. Paul Murphy, Jason Foley, and Dylan Casey, who shackles their men really, really well, especially Jason Foley. Like what they were doing in the first half of the game, and Fitzmaurice noted this as well. Whoever was on Murphy at any particular time, they were dragging him out and tiring him out. And eventually, I think that kind of caught up with Michael Murphy today. Then you look at Conor O'Donnell. Like even Conor O'Donnell was still doing some of his donkey work around the middle of the field. Like he won 2 Kerry kickouts. He won a few Donegal kickouts as well. And that was an indication that he's dragged out. And he wasn't in close to the goal where he has been dangerous all season. So that is a credit to Kerry in terms of negating that threat, in terms of dragging out the Donegal players all over the place. Whereas the Donegal defenders were thinking kind of linear, in a linear kind of way. They were packed inside their full back line, which happened throughout the whole season in Fibber, Rorty and Brendan McCall. But that was tea and biscuits for the likes of David Clifford, for Dylan Gainey as well today, who were inside the full forward line at their comfort zone, and they were going to pop over scores. So Donegal, in that aspect, didn't do well in dragging their men out. But I think in terms of the Kerry point of view, they tired Donegal, the Donegal forwards in particular. Other than Gallen did well, in fairness, in the first half and the second half, which questions even more why he went off. He was probably their best performing forward in terms of shooting accuracy and stuff like that. So look, I think they have to give Kerry a lot of credit in terms of their fullbacks, in terms of their halfbacks who ran their socks off, and Brino Beokley, Gavin White. Mike Breen, I thought, was very, very good as well. Another player in and around the middle. I thought he was clearing up ball really, really well. In terms of turnovers, he was excellent as well. Like, you couldn't name a bad player on the Kerry team today. And that's the biggest compliment you could give a team. Because if all 15 players are doing their job, eventually you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
No matter if things go wrong mid-game or whatever. And things seem to be, turning when Donegal made it 22 points to 18 and Donegal were 4 points down and they were getting a run on Kerry, it seemed. But what was impressive from a Kerry point of view, they calmed it down. They used their experience and they kept going and they saw off the game like true champions. And you have to give them a lot of credit for that. So, like, every line on the pitch, they performed absolutely brilliantly. And I thought the full back line in particular, dragging out the Donegal full forwards, was a key aspect.
Yeah, no, it's a great point to be made. Speaking on the articles and everything that was written. Oh my goodness gracious, I can't put 2 words together, man. Just for anybody who is watching, I was on a golf trip all weekend. I landed back in the house today at, I think, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. So then I watched the final after having a little nap. So I don't know if that's done me any good. But anyway, speaking on the run up to the final over the course of the year and the various articles and stuff like that was written, attacking the Kerry team, having a go at Jack O'Connor, having a go at the players, calling them a one-man team, everything like that. From people like Darragh O'Shea, who's a Kerry GA legend, I personally don't understand why you would, go at your own team, your own manager while they're still in the championship. That has never made sense to me, never will. If you're a fan, you should be getting behind your team. You shouldn't be bashing them while they're trying to achieve an All-Ireland title. But anyway, that's just my opinion. How well did Kerry manage that? How well did Jack O'Connor manage that? How much does he deserve to be credited for that? Because you cannot underestimate how important it is to keep the players in that mentality where they're going to prove people wrong and not let the hate get to them. And you look at Jack, 5th All-Ireland title, first one in 2004, now 2025. This one probably one of the sweetest, beating Armagh, Tyrone and Donegal back-to-back. Jack has to be considered, in my opinion, one of the greatest managers in the history of Gaelic games. And by God, they shut the haters up.
Yeah, and in a way, I think it was their kind of leaders stepping up in a way. Gavin White in particular, David Clifford, Joe O'Connor, who's really announced himself this season, Sean O'Shea, even Shane Ryan in goal, Paul Murphy, these guys, they stepped up and they were going to say, like, even after the Meath game, like, easily, a team could easily come out of Tullamore that day and say that, okay, this has gone horribly wrong. We might as well pack up the year and go again next season. But Kerry were having none of it. Like the Cavan game, they were expected to win that in Killarney, to be fair. But that Armagh game, everything seemed to click, especially in that third quarter where they dominated Armagh's kickouts and they got some loads of scores off that. And it was dominant performance against Armagh. People started to sit up and think, okay, Kerry are back now, they're cooking. Then the Tyrone game, as I mentioned, then the Donegal game as well. But in a way, I think we talked about season-defining games. We talked about, obviously, Tip's defining game last week being the game at Páirc Uí Chaoimh where Darren McCarthy gets sent off. The defining game for Kerry was the game in Tullamore against Meath, because that is when things started to change. They weren't performing particularly well. Even up to then, they had one real dominant performance in a way, and that was probably against Roscommon and Killarney. Even in the two games against Cork troubled them at different stages. In the Munster game, they troubled them all the way. And then they lose in the Meath game. In a way, Séamus, I know this sounds patronising in a way, but did the Meath game win them the All-Ireland? Because imagine if they won that game. They would.
Do you know what it really reminded me of? Sorry, just to answer your question on it. It really reminded me of 2009. And I know I said this before, but it really reminded me of that, where Kerry lost to Cork and Munster. Didn't look on it at all. They had a couple of very ropey games where they beat, I think, Sligo, when Sligo had a penalty to beat them and Diarmaid Murphy saved it. They beat Antrim and they didn't look good in that game. And, people were slating them inside their own county and outside the county as well. A lot of people were saying that Dublin were going to tear them apart in that All-Ireland quarter-final. We all know what happened. And Kerry went on to win the All-Ireland that year, and all's well that ends well. And people tend to forget the shit they were getting that year before it fell into place in the quarterfinal. And I think this year as well, now they'll be at the All-Star Awards and, of course, Kerry were going to win the All-Ireland and everything like that. A month ago, that was not the case. A month ago, people were not saying that. People were saying, like, as Darragh O'Shea himself, a Kerry legend. I'm not going to take away from his abilities as a player. He's one of the greatest midfielders I've ever seen. But when he was saying, it's a pity they didn't draw Galway, so that they'd be knocked out of the championship and it would finish here. I mean, I didn't understand that. I don't agree with it.
Yeah,
that's my point. Is they really did answer the call, and I do agree with you. I think maybe if the Meath game didn't happen, maybe they wouldn't have been put with their backs against the wall like that, because all of a sudden that put them in a position where they could build a bit of a siege mentality, which, as we've seen, is like gold dust for sports teams.
It is. It's a change point in their season. And as well as that, you have to mention this as well. Kerry had Paul Gainey, who had an 80% shot accuracy in previous games, wasn't coming on today. Dermot O'Connor didn't play much of the year. Obviously, had an injury against Cork, and then obviously had the injury against Cavan as well, where the shoulder kind of buckled out as well, which wasn't a good sign. They were missing him for the majority of the season. They missed Paddy for some of the season as well. Obviously suspended after the Cork game, and then he got an injury after that as well. Paul Gainey getting an injury. So players had to step up big time, and that's including the young players. And we talk about David Cliffords, and we talk about Joe O'Connor's, and we talk about Paddy's, and rightfully so. They are brilliant players, and they probably deserve all-stars this season. But the unsung heroes, in my opinion, the Mark O'Shea's, the Zillan Casey's, the Sean O'Brien's, these guys perform well at club level in Kerry. But when these guys had to stand up and be counted, they definitely did so. Like Mark O'Shea, I know he played well for Dr. Crokes in the club championship last season, but in a way, he came out of nowhere in mid-season. Like, to come into the Kerry team as seamlessly as he did and perform the way he did, deserves a lot of credit for that. He came on, obviously, against Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh and performed absolutely brilliantly. And then Jack started to trust him more after that. Sean O'Brien, brilliant performances over the past year from him as well. Dylan Casey's announced himself as one of the best defenders in the country this season. When he had a few ropey games to enter his inter-county career. So look, Kerry deserve a lot of credit for finding these gems in many ways. Mike Breen as well. I know a lot of people would say Ty Morley. Exactly, and Ty Morley would have been probably the main starter for Kerry, and a lot of people would say, why didn't you go for experience, Jack? Why didn't you go for Ty Morley? Mike Breen showed today, he was all over the pitch. Literally, like I was taking those stats, and every kick out and every turnover, and it all seemed to go through Mike Breen, the centre-back. Probably an unsung hero, as I mentioned, the unsung heroes. So, as I'm saying, like, you can mention David Clifford and you can mention Joe O'Connor. Two of them are definitely, without a doubt, front runners for Footballer of the Year. But you have to mention the unsung heroes as well. And these guys kind of like, it's almost like the pawns in the machine. And exactly, and that's what it was with Kerry throughout here, not just today, but against Armagh as well, against Tyrone in some parts as well. And to an extent, Joe O'Connor could be classified as that as well, because Joe's had kind of a difficult period. I remember in 2022, he was injured for the majority of the year, and he was the captain of the Kerry team, but he was injured for the majority of the year, so he had to share the captaincy with Sean O'Shea. And he didn't get his big break in the Kerry team up until maybe last season. A big break in terms of being one of the big main players this season. That night in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, he announced himself as one of the best players in the country. So like, he deserves a lot of credit for turning his fortunes around, as well as all the unsung heroes there, like the O'Sheas, the O'Briens, the Caseys, Dylan Gainey to an extent. Like, even my stats during the week, like I calculated 3 shots out of 7, under 50% shot accuracy. Jack O'Connor could have easily started Paul Gainey today, and no one would have blamed him. Experienced player on the team, good shooting accuracy, and maybe the occasion would have got too much for Dylan Gainey. But Dylan scored 3 points from play. So again, these unsung heroes, they deserve a lot of credit for what they've done for Kerry football this season, and in terms of changing around the fortune. So that has to be noted too.
It certainly does. You like this comment, Matthew? It's from Brendan here. He says, lads, as a Kerry man, the best fuel we always get is from Joe Brolly. Yeah. I mean, he came out with a fairly punchy statement before the final, basically saying that there was no way that Donegal wouldn't win. And here we are. So, I mean, yeah, that's Kerry have used that pretty well, but we didn't have a well Joe Brolly. What do you think of that moment? Gavin also asked a very interesting question. Are Kerry Ulster champions now? Bet Cavan, Tyrone, Armagh and Donegal all in a row. And they're all counties that have been in Ulster finals or won Ulster in the last 5 years. I know that Armagh haven't, but the other 3 have. I mean, Kerry, I remember someone saying, I think Colin Parkinson addressed that on one of his podcasts. Someone was saying that Kerry wouldn't be able to win an Ulster championship. They definitely would. I mean, Ulster is seriously competitive. There's no question about it. Ulster is the most competitive province, and I think the most even province in terms of the strongest team to the weakest team. But Kerry would definitely be able to compete, and they would definitely be able to win that provincial championship. Brendan says it was Mike Breen with the assist for Clifford's goal against Tyrone. That's a very good point. Mike Breen absolutely powered forward for that. A2 says, to be fair, you could write what Joe Brolly knows about football on a matchbox and still have space left over. A2 not holding back any punches with that one there. Matthew, we've broken down the whole game. Or do you want to...
What I will say about, in terms of Kerry winning the All-Ireland, this is one aspect I was absolutely delighted with. Shutting up Joe Brolly and shutting up the Ulster kind of fraternity as well. Because what we were hearing over the last year or so was, Munster football, it's a hurling province and things like that. And Kerry aren't up to the standard, and Kerry football isn't what it usually was and things like that. Kerry shut them all up. Up in Ulster. And Joe Brolly, again, with his pants being pulled down throughout the whole season, I think you could count, I'd say, about 4 or 5 times that has happened throughout the whole season. And he loves to have a dig at, as you said on my pod, 3 particular counties in Kerry, Cork and Mayo. And
and never Donegal, never Dublin.
No, not at all. And he keeps with the same persona. Look, that's his choice, but he's a guy that knows absolutely zilch about football. For a pundit, and he's won All-Ireland, and he questions Kerry. And I remember actually when he called the Gooch a choker in 2012, and even as a Cork, that was tripe. Gooch is. I
remember that, because that's still up on YouTube, by the way. Is that Pat Spillane was saying you called him a choker, and he said, no, I didn't. I said that if a stranger came to watch Crokes play Cross McGlen, and you said that's the best player in the country, you would say, no, he's choking. And Pat Spillane was kind of like, do you know what I mean? It's an interesting one. Brendan says the first ever Triple Crown winners in Gaelic football history, All Ireland, Munster and Ulster. And there's only a few times that I will have there's only a few times that I will have a massive smile on my face on this podcast, and that's usually when Dublin win, and when one of our biggest rivals lose, and when my brother from Mexico's Yulzakul leaves a comment in. He says, "It was a great season of Gaelic football, my favourite season of the year. I'll miss the games. Greetings from Mexico, friends. It's great to have you on the show, my friend, as always." A2 quotes what Pat Spillane said. He says, "Forgive him, Lord, for he knows not what he says." That was I think, what was it? That there are people who know, and then there are people who don't know. That's me. And there's people who don't know they don't know. So I love Pat Spillane. Like, I have to be honest, I absolutely love Pat Spillane. I really miss him on the punditry, because he was entertaining, and I listened to the Indo Sport pod, to be honest, mainly for Pat Spillane. I think he's one of the most entertaining GA pundits that we've ever had. And when you're talking as well, he's one of those players that, like, because of the fact that now people just kind of associate him with being the pundit, you forget the guy's one of the greatest footballers we've ever seen. Like, he has 8 All-Ireland medals. He was an absolute cornerstone of a Kerry team that could very well be considered the greatest team of all time in that Mick O'Dwyer era. So, I mean, he is just, a legend of the game, and hopefully we get more of him. The Pat Spillane, my favourite on the football. Joe Brody's then my favourite on the hurling. Not Joe Brody, Jesus. John Milan is my favourite on the hurling. John Milan on the radio commentary is the best thing I've ever heard. Matthew, we've talked about it all. We've gone through everything. If I could ask you to do something that will be a little bit difficult, we've talked about it. So Kerry were coming into the final against the Donegal team that were back-to-back Ulster champions and one step away from basically completing what they had done in Jim McGuinness's first reign all over again, winning the All-Ireland in year 2. Kerry stopped them. If you could sum it up, how did Kerry get the win today? What were the things that they did better? What were the key things in the win?
I think massively their big players stood up, in the likes of Paul Clifford, David Clifford, Joe O'Connor as well. Joe O'Connor, if David Clifford wasn't superhuman, Joe O'Connor would probably be Footballer of the Year right now. Mike Breen, the unsung heroes, all stood up as well. The likes of Mark O'Shea and Sean O'Brien. These sorts of players really got involved as well. And restricting Donegal to no goal chances in the game. And Donegal didn't really have a chance for a 2-pointer. The Kerry defence deserve a lot of credit for that. It was just a tactical masterclass from Jack O'Connor, and it could be the quite opposite from Jim McGuinness. Obviously, dropping Hugh McFadden before throwing, obviously taking off Oisin Gallen in the second half, not going for 2-pointers as well. The matchups were pretty weird as well from a Donegal point of view, putting Kieran Moore, obviously, and Joe O'Connor in the first half, and Joe O'Connor was dominating for pillar to post in midfield. So look, it was bad.
Gavin White was a big mistake.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Gavin White tore them apart in that first half with his runs forward. And I think, unfortunately for Donegal, this final feels like 2014, where they've just kind of let it pass them by. Like, I mean, they'll be sitting there in the dressing room after that thinking, did we give it everything that we had? No, they didn't perform to the level that they're capable of. And look, Kerry definitely did things to make it that way. You cannot take it away from Kerry. They've smashed Armagh, Tyrone and Donegal back to back to back. There's no doubt Kerry are the best team in Ireland. Jack O'Connor has to be considered up there with the best managers we've seen, while some of the players, such as the Cliffords, Shawnee O'Shea, Joe O'Connor, when their career is all said and done, they could be some of the greats that we've ever seen in this game, if they're not already that, and they could be some of the greatest of all time. There's no doubt thoroughly deserved All-Ireland success. Congratulations to the Kingdom, All-Ireland football champions for 2025. Thoroughly deserved. Matthew, looking back at the whole thing, before we move on, are there any other underdogs that you'd like to put as a potential runner for an All-Star? Any potential underdogs before we move on to the Camogie?
I think Conor O'Donnell deserves, from Donegal point of view, one of the few
players. He was very good today.
Yeah, he was. And he was good throughout the whole season, in my opinion. It's another difficult one. I think Patton, no matter what happened today, I think he was definitely up there for a goalkeeper. I think Finbar Roarty's up there from the Donegal point of view as well. Mike Breen certainly has to be up there for an All-Star, even though a lot of people might not think so. Then again, could you put the whole Kerry half back line there Begley, in Gavin White and Mike Breen, that wouldn't be a bad shout. I know it would look silly, to be honest, having the same players from the same counties in the half back line there, but look, I think Mike Breen probably deserves a shout. I think Faber Rorty, obviously Sean Patton as well, and Conor O'Donnell, I think for the year that he had in terms of scoring from play, in terms of showing up for the final today, definitely deserves a shout at corner forward. In midfield, I think there was no complaints even before the final even began. Joe O'Connor, Michael Langan. But then the rest of the team, like David Clifford's a slam dunk. Sean O'Shea is probably a slam dunk. Would say Sean Rafferty from Meath as well. So look, there are underdogs for an Ulster, but I think Conor O'Donnell certainly from Donegal deserves one.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he deserves one. Gavin says begging if we allow non-semi-finalists. He says Ryan gets in ahead of Patton for me, all-round better keeper. Over the course of the year, I'd probably give it to Patton. I think he's had a big impact. Brendan also gives a very good shout. Jordan Morris from Meath. I think he is definitely one. I think if you're looking from a Meath perspective, I think you need to look at the likes of potentially Kieran Caulfield, Rory Kinsella. They'd be very, very good shouts. I think if you're looking at Tyrone, I think Michael McKernan was in amazing form before he got injured. He could maybe be considered. Darren McCurry, maybe, but to be honest, I think it's going to be dominated by Kerry, and rightfully so. When you look at how they swept to the All-Ireland, I don't think there's going to be much of a complaint about that. And yeah, that's the chat about the All-Ireland final wrapped up. We are going to move on now to the All-Ireland Senior Camogie Championship semi-finals, and then we will give a quick preview for the final. So for the second year in a row, as I was saying at the top of the show, it will be a Cork versus Galway All-Ireland final. And let's start off with the Rebels. Cork continue their winning streak in the All-Ireland Camogie Championships. The back-to-back All-Ireland champions beat Waterford in yesterday's semi-final, booking their place in the final as they chased down 3 in a row. And the big players were all there for this one for Cork. You're looking at the likes of Katrina Mackey with 4 points, Saoirse McCarthy with 7, Orla Mullins at 1-2, Amy O'Connor with 3, Saoirse McCartan with 2, Emma Murphy 2, Laura Hayes with a point. Cork looked very solid in this one. 10-point victory over the Daisha and into the showpiece event.
Yeah, and to be fair, the Cork Camogie team, out of the 4 county teams, they are the one team that you think they're just good in so many ways, aren't they? They win things. Obviously, they're going for 3 in a row for the first time since 1973. And the players are relishing it in their own right. Like, I obviously was privileged enough to interview Saoirse McCarthy for the Southern Star podcast during the week, and just her attitude towards Camogie in terms of sport in general is absolutely brilliant, in fairness. And she got player of the match. I think Valerie Wheeler mentioned in RT, it's the 5th year in a row or something that she got the player of the match in the All-Ireland semi-finals, which is some record for Saoirse, to be fair. It had absolutely brilliant display as well. And yeah, as you mentioned, them players, but you have to mention Orla Mullins as well, coming off the bench, 1-2. This is a competitive squad for Cork. For her to get a young player like that to get 1-2 coming off the bench is a brilliant achievement by her. Look, I have to give credit to Waterford as well, because they performed very well in the first half. They tested Cork all the way. I think that was Cork's toughest test throughout the whole season, league and championship. Beck Harton was superb, but I believe Rocket was brilliant. The rain bray around the middle of the park. So they deserve a lot of credit for what they put in, Waterford, in fairness. But I think it just indicates when things seemed to be going on in the first half for Cork, which I was thinking that in my head, I was thinking, oh no, not another loss here for Cork team. We don't need that. But then the second half came and the professionalism came with this team. Like, they weren't going to lose. Even if Waterford were performing well, it was just the case that Cork were easing into the game and they were just going to get over the line. I think the second half scoreline was Cork 112, Waterford 4 points. So I think Cork really, really put the foot down in the second half. They got over the line. They introduced some subs like Orla Mullins, who did well after coming onto the pitch. And look, it's a brilliant win for Cork from a Cork point of view. And into the All-Ireland final they go first. They're aiming for first 3 in a row, as I mentioned, since the early 1970s. And a brilliant quote by Saoirse during the week in the Star Sport podcast, actually. She was mentioning something in regards to, myself maybe being upset about Cork hurlers losing last week, or Kerry even losing her rivals today. She was saying, it's just a game. Nobody died. And I just love that kind of attitude. She just loves the game. The whole Cork team do. And best of luck to them in the All-Ireland final. I genuinely mean a brilliant group of girls, obviously, and a brilliant team, obviously, and hopefully they could get the O'Duffy Cup for the third season running.
I mean, they're definitely front runners. I mean, they're in there in the final against Galway. Galway had a great win over Tipperary, which we'll jump into in a second. But in my opinion, nobody's stopping Cork. And I said that at the very beginning of the year, that if you wanted the biggest bang for your buck in terms of who's going to win the All-Ireland, if you want to put a bet down and have the safest that the money's going to come back to you, it's Cork winning the All-Ireland Camogie Championship. They do look streets ahead right now. But across all of the codes, and in Camogie as well, we've seen that when a team looks like they're untouchable, like in Camogie history, Wexford winning the 3 in a row and the team with the Ursula Jacobs, the Mags Darcy's, that they looked streets ahead of everybody else. And then all of a sudden, they're not. And teams have caught up to them. You're looking at Waterford, you're looking at Galway, you're looking at Tip, you're looking at Kilkenny as to who are the front runners to eventually catch up with Cork. Waterford played Cork in that final 2 years ago. They were swept out the gate. This isn't as bad a result as that, but could you say that Waterford are getting closer to Cork, or is the gap bigger than it has been in previous seasons, would you think? Because when you look at players like Orla Mullins not starting, coming off the bench, getting 1-2, I mean, the squad depth is ridiculous, which, again, if you want to compare it to other teams that we've seen, I mean, that was what Limerick were like. When they were winning the 4 in a row, you had players coming off the bench like Donegal Darling one time, or Pat Ryan another time, or David Reedy another time. There was always somebody in the squad ready to come in and make their mark, and Cork definitely have that about them as well.
Yeah, they do. And to answer your question on Waterford, I think they have got closer, and that comes with experience, because the last time in 2023, they reached their first All-Ireland final since 1944, and that was a big achievement for them. They now are in a situation where they beat Kilkenny. They got close to Galway in the All-Ireland group. They were in an All-Ireland quarter-final in Croke Park, and they swept Clare aside. I know that's a small thing, but Waterford in the past would have kind of maybe struggled through those sorts of games, but they swept Clare. They really, Clare put up a few tested stages, but I think Waterford were very, very dominant against them. And as for the first half yesterday, I think they had 80% shot accuracy in the first half and the second half. I know they only got 4 points in the second half, but they made use of what chances they did get. And I think they did perform well yesterday. The likes of Niamh Rocket and Beck Harton, even the likes of Lorraine Bray around the middle of the park as well, and a few like the other scorers, well, Abby Flynn, they just didn't get enough out of the likes of Annie Fitzgerald or Mairead O'Brien, who have done well in the past for Waterford teams or for other teams like UN and the Ashburn Cup. So I think Waterford would be disappointed in terms of that. But in terms of going toe-to-toe with Cork and competing well, to be ahead of them at half-time, but it was just Cork had kind of that extra kind of gear, extra kind of experience to get over the line. That was the main thing out of it. And I think Waterford, they'll be back, no doubt about it. They have some very good young players. Beck Harton and Niamh Rocket are still pretty much in their prime right now. Abby Flynn's a young player. Lorraine Bray's at the lower end right now of her career. But you look at other players across the team in Waterford, like the likes of Mackie Gostill coming onto the pitch, another good young player. Keely Corbett Barry as well. Kate Lynch, I thought, had a very good game at sweeper. So look, I think Waterford had some very good performances. It was just experience that got Cork over the line. And Cork are up here. Waterford are coming up to maybe here, and they're just edging a bit closer to the top. I think they're better than Kilkenny. Galway, they were very, very close at stages in that All-Ireland group game. They only lost by 6 points in the end when Galway got a bit of a run on them. But if you were to ask me, I know we're going to mention Galway, Tip in a sec, but if you were to ask me who's actually closer to the top, Waterford or Tip, I would argue Waterford, because they brought that glass ceiling in a way. They got to the All-Ireland final. Tip haven't. Yes, Tip have won a league title, but I think Waterford have done well over the last few years with the players that they do have and making the most out of them as well. And let's not forget, Jory Wallace left mid-season for Waterford. Mick Boland actually came in mid-season as Waterford manager. So they could have easily, down tools with the manager gone. But in fairness to the players and Mick Boland himself, they did well throughout the whole season, and they got together and produced a good campaign, which yielded an All-Ireland semi-final, which they were very, very competitive in. So I think they'll be proud of their efforts.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, they went down swinging against what is the best team in the country. There's no doubt about it. And going into that final, Cork are going to be huge favourites. But looking at last year's final, Galway did test them. Galway, you know, are a steely team, lots of experience in there. The likes of Aoife Donoghue, the likes of Roisin Black. There's a lot of experience in there and a lot of talent. And it is Galway who are going to be back in the All-Ireland final, against Cork once again. Galway 118, Tipperary 111 in Nolan Park. Galway back in the All-Ireland final where they will play Cork for the second year in a row. Carrie Dolan with 6, Niamh Mallon with 1, 2, Eilish O'Reilly with 5 points, Caoimhe Kelly, Mairead Dillon with 2 each, and Aoife Donoghue with 1 were the scorers as they get past Tip by 7 points in a very commanding display. Going into the final against Cork, it's a massive test going in there against the back-to-back champions, but Galway did run them relatively close last year. Galway will be confident. It's a big challenge, but with a result like this, you'd have to take confidence from it.
Yeah, I think Galway will take a lot of confidence, even beating Waterford by 6 points in a game that was tricky for at stages in the group phase, and then to beat Tipperary the way they did. Like, Tipperary scored 1-3 from play. Like, it was just, from a Tipperary point of view, that's not great, but from a Galway point of view, in holding a lot of the forwards, especially the likes of Grace O'Brien, scoreless from play. Jean Kelly even coming onto the pitch, I know she got a point straight away, but Galway shackled her really well. Clodagh McIntyre didn't get much space either. But look, it's a tough day to take from a Tipperary point of view, but from a Galway point of view, some good displays attacking and defending as well. Carrie Dolan, as you mentioned there, 1 point from play to add 2 or 6 points. Eilish O'Reilly, like, she, even in the scores I put up during the week, she wasn't one of the main scores for Galway, but I think Elaine Aylward mentioned in commentary as well on RT that Eilish is kind of one of the big players that turns up for Galway in an All-Ireland semi-final or an All-Ireland final, and she definitely showed it yesterday. Niamh Mallon with 1-2, obviously, and Mairead Dillon, one of the younger crop, even Caoimhe Kelly as well, performing well. So look, I think Galway will be happy in terms of the way they're going at the moment, and when you consider Anya Keane's out with an ACL apparently. Obviously, Niamh Kilkenny's not available this year. Sarah Dervin, I don't know if she retired or she's not available this year either. So they are missing a lot of players. And Orla and Siobhan McGrath weren't there either yesterday. They are missing a lot of players, but they seem to be finding new players that are stepping up to the mark, and that is a good sign from a Galway point of view. And what I will say for the Cork and Galway final, yes, Cork beat them by 13 points in the league final. That was a comprehensive win. But I will say Galway always turn up in finals. Look at last year. They were very, very close against Cork. You cannot write them off. And I think Galway will be very, very competitive against them, in fairness, Cork. And I think Galway will put up a challenge there. As for Tip, look, they got a lucky goal in the first half through Karen Kennedy. Other than that, they didn't offer much, to be honest with you. And that was a concerning point from a Tipperary point of view. They'd be frustrated with the more victories. They wanted to get a win, and they just didn't in the end. It was just unfortunate the way they failed, especially in the second half, and Galway pushed on in the second half to win this game. But before we leave this game as well, special mention wishing Karine Blair all the best as well. Obviously, that was a horrendous injury she got in the first half, and obviously wishing her all the best. It looked like a good cushion. Hopefully she does recover soon rather than later, and we will see her back on the Camogie pitch soon.
Absolutely, well said. I think when you look at, I think there's a little window there where you're talking about with the Galway defence and everything like that, because that's how they were able to keep Cork so close last year. Their defending last year in the final was fantastic. I think when you look at someone there like Roisin Black, I think, in my opinion, she's the best fullback in Camogie right now. Building the defence around her is, that's a perfect start in terms of the game plan to deal with Cork, because you've seen with the forwards that Cork have, the McCartans, Saoirse McCarthy, Katrina Mackey, Amy O'Connor, when they get going, they can tear you apart. And Galway cannot allow Cork to get up a string of momentum like that. They have to make the game a dogfight. I think that's the way that they can get over the line. If it's a champagne Camogie style, I think Cork run away with it. But if it's a battle, I think there's a route there for Galway to victory. When you look at the experience that they have in the side, the likes of Aoife Donoghue still leading from the front, there is a route for Galway to victory through that. But if it becomes a free-flowing, open game of Camogie, I think all signs point to Cork winning. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it comes together. Yeah, preview prediction. I think the final, I think Cork will win it. I think Galway will do something similar to what they did last year, but I think Cork might be able to put the burners on in the last quarter, and I think they'll kick on and win by about 6 or 7. What would you be thinking?
I think Cork should win as well, but I think it'll be about 2 or 3. I still think it'll be twice, Séamus. I'm not in the mood for bigging up Cork after last week, so keep me a low profile.
Stuff. I mean, that final, hell of a week. Yeah, that's it. That's the weekend wrapped up. We just want to say as well, massive congratulations to Galway, to Cork for qualifying for the All-Ireland Senior Camogie Championship Final 2025. And a massive congratulations to Kerry for winning their 39th All-Ireland Senior Football title. What an achievement. 5th All-Ireland for Jack O'Connor. Also what an achievement as well. We witnessed greatness there with David Clifford, Joe O'Connor, Paddy Clifford, their displays, not just in this final, but throughout the year. But yeah, that is another episode wrapped up. Don't forget, guys, we have 2 All-Ireland final shows left to come before we jump into the club championship season. The All-Ireland LGFA final, which is next weekend, and the All-Ireland Camogie final, which is the weekend after that. Again, same thing. Sunday, 8 p.m. We'll be right here breaking down all of the weekend's action. Till those episodes, enjoy the celebrations if you're from Kerry. Enjoy the week. We'll see you back here next weekend at 8 p.m. Until then, Torah.